friends, here with the Oracle Outlook for the week starting April the 15th, 2019. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining me for this week's video reading. This week I've been working on my latest installment for my Cartomancy with Playing Card series, which has been a viewer requested series. And so I'm in that space this week of working with playing cards, so I thought I would work with playing cards for this week's Oracle Outlook video. So I'm working with a new deck of playing cards. One of my Cartomancy students, and she actually found me through that Cartomancy series that I was referring to. So she became a student, and so we're working on her growth and development as a reader of playing cards. And so during one of our calls, she asked me where I get my playing cards from, and she made the suggestion that I check out Walgreen. So I live here in the United States, so Walgreens is a chain of drugstores, and that they've kind of evolved more into becoming these wonderful convenience stores, but they started out as being drugstores. And so she made the suggestion that I find playing cards there, and so I just happened to stop at a Walgreens recently, and I walked in and I found a cool set of playing cards. So this week I'm going to be working with the Bicycle. It's a Bicycle brand of cards. It's a Bicycle vintage classic playing cards, and the cool thing about it is that the deck only cost me like $4. So for those of you who live in the United States and you're into playing cards, I'm going to make a suggestion as a result of the suggestion made to me by one of my students. Check out a Walgreens in your area. So again, I'm going to be working with the Bicycle vintage classic playing cards. And so now that I've set things up, let's get to the table and take a closer look at the cards that are going to be making up this week's Oracle Outlook video reading. And here we are with the cards on the table. I'm going to take a few moments to shuffle the cards. And as I do, I'm focusing on the usual intention for these weekly general readings. And that is, we are seeking the information, the guidance, the insight, and the advice that's going to be most helpful and beneficial as we move through the experiences of the upcoming week. Feeling one more time will be good. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the cards. Fan them out. And I'm looking for 5 cards in the fan that are getting my attention, because I typically do a line of 5 for these weekly general readings. And card selection is very easy this week. And card 5. So those are the 5 cards. I'm going to take the remainder of the deck up and put that to one side. And now I'm going to line the cards up. And just like I do in most cases, I'm going to start with the card in the middle. The middle card is the heart of the matter for the week, or what I call the focus card or the central issue. So taking a look at that, we have, this is a great card to have. So here we have the 9 of clubs. So clubs is a suit of work and business. So this could be a focus for some people on work and business. The number 9 is a number of gain and or attainment. So some people may be focusing on gaining or attaining business, right? So that is one way of looking at this card. Another way of looking at this card is that this is called the time and distance card. And I will put it in connection to the emotional and spiritual and psychological aspect of this card. This card for me can represent a journey. So it usually represents a journey on an emotional level, a psychological level, or a spiritual level. Now the time and distance part of that, if it was talking about actual travel, it could be, going the distance in terms of a location that's far and away, or something that's going to take a great deal of time, right? So that's the time and distance aspect of it. But if I go with the idea that this card is talking about an emotional journey, spiritual journey, psychological journey, and the 9 in that regard can represent our higher self, because the 9th letter in the alphabet is the letter I, and so the I can symbolize one's higher self. So going with that, I'm seeing for a lot of us, it's going to be a focus on our either emotional growth and development, psychological growth and development, or spiritual growth and development. And this is where the time and distance part comes out. So we could be taking a look at the progress that we've been making with regard to a situation, because the suit of clubs can represent progress being made, right? We can also be going to looking at our growth and development from the lens of teaching and learning. The suit of clubs in the spiritual context can represent teaching and learning. So we could be asking ourselves, and I always love presenting this question, we could be asking ourselves, what am I learning through the experience that I'm going through? The 9 is a number of wisdom gained through experience, right? It could represent the gain and attainment of wisdom, right? Going back to the number 9 representing the I, the higher self, that's higher self-wisdom, right? So we could be taking a look at the progress we've made and seeing how far we've come, right? So I'm seeing that as a potential focus for the 9, and I think that would be, or the 9 of clubs, I should say. So that would be a focus for probably the majority of us. But for some people, this card can also come up when we are focusing on our work or business, and in the business sense, gaining or attaining business. So that's how I would look at the 9 of clubs. So now the surrounding cards will give us more information about that. So starting with the card on the far left, opening the line up, we have, okay. So here we have the 7 of diamonds. If I go with the way I introduce this, if we go with the idea that people are working on gaining or attaining business or work, then the 7 of diamonds here could be about an investment being made. Diamonds is the suit that can represent money and finances for me, but this particular card can represent investing money into something. So for some people, if they're wanting to gain business or attain business, it may be a matter of an investment being made. Now, if it's not a cash investment, then this could be the investment of time, energy, and other resources, because in addition to an investment of money, I call this the investment of time, energy, and resources. If that's the case, then whatever the investment that's being made, the person wants to consider what is going to be the return on the investment. So if it's not like you're investing money and you may be getting someone to invest into your business, then you may have to think about or consider what's going to be the return on that individual's investment, right? Now, if we go with the idea that the 9 of clubs is talking about our spiritual, emotional, psychological journey, and we're taking a look at the progress that we've made, we're seeing how far we've come, then this card here goes back to about the return on the investment. But this is a different kind of investment. This is the investment of energy, because the suit of diamonds for me can represent energy. So if we're talking about higher self-wisdom, wisdom gained through experience, what is life teaching us? What are we learning from our experiences? Then this card is about taking a look at the investment of our time and energy into situations, circumstances, conditions, relationships, even people, and asking ourselves, did we get the return on the investment of those energies. Because again, this card can represent spiritual energy. Spiritual energy is what I was saying. The number 7 is a spiritual number, right? So on a spiritual level, we're looking at the energy that we're putting into a situation. And here's the other thing. We're talking about a return. Anytime we make an investment of our time, energy, and resources, there's always a return, right? So for some of us, we may need to do some honest self-evaluation and asking ourselves, was it worth it? Was the energy that I put in, was it worth it based on the return that I've gotten? Right? This is the spiritual principle. If we go with the idea that both of these cards are talking about things from a spiritual context, this is the spiritual principle of sowing and reaping, right? Because this card can also represent reaping a harvest, right? So we're always reaping a harvest based on the seeds that we have sown, the seeds we have planted, right? So it's a matter of taking a look at the energy that we are putting into a situation, because we always get something out of it, right? So it may be a matter of assessing something and reassessing something, right? So that is the thing that I would say with the 7 of diamonds. So again, for some people, this may be literally about an investment of cash, investment of money into a business designed to help it grow, right? Or to gain more business. But if we're going with the journey through life, then this is about taking a look at the energies that we are putting into a situation or situations and asking ourselves the question, what was the return on the investment and was it worth it? Right? And as I'm saying that, I'm looking at the number 7 here again. The 7 is a number of spirituality, like I said, but it's also about self-awareness and personal insights. And so one of the things that I'm seeing here with this idea about spiritual energy is that for some people, it may be beneficial to do meditation and contemplation this week, putting your energy into those 2 practices. So that's another thing I wanted to say about the 7 of diamonds. So now let's take a look at the card in between the 7 of diamonds and the 9 of clubs. And here we have, okay, so now here we have another diamond card. So on this side of the line, we have 2 cards from the suit of diamonds. So this is about energy. This is about our resources. This is about material concerns. This is also about power and success. Those are all the things that I attribute to the suit of diamonds, right? So again, we have this thing about being mindful of where we are placing our energy this week. So Jack of diamonds, first thing is that for some people, there may be a situation that involves a child, because the jacks as people can represent children and young people. So there may be some focus on a situation having to do with a young person. So that is one way of looking at it. My go-to, because I don't have children of my own, so my go-to for the Jack of diamonds is that jacks can represent news or messages. And this one in particular can represent news or messages pertaining to money, because we already talked about here with the 7 of diamonds about an investment of money. So we have that being repeated here. And in addition, the jack is looking at the 7 of diamonds. So in some cases, I consider or take into consideration the message of the card that the jack is facing, because that could be what the news is about. So for some people, and for those people who are business oriented or business focused this week, there may be news or messages about a lot of money, because the 7 of diamonds can represent a lot of money. There may be news or messages pertaining to an investment, right? And again, that news and message is not only just about the investment, but the return on the investment, right? Another thing having to do with news or business, then this jack could be about valuable information, right? And so it could be valuable information about a lot of money or an investment or the return on an investment. So I'm seeing that. And then we have here with the diamonds and the clubs, it could just be a matter of work and money. So for some people, focusing on work and money issues, right? Or work that we want to see some profit in, because this would make me think of a business becoming profitable. You know, if we go with the color of the cards, we're talking about maybe taking something that may be in the red to getting it to be in the black, right? Because the red would be potentially what's the deficit, and then this would be getting enough business where we switch the colors and we make it profitable, right? Then the diamonds would talk about rewards and profit. Now, if we go with the idea that the focus here for some of us is on our spiritual journey, our psychological journey, our emotional journey, and if I go with what I said here, finally, the last thing I said here about, you know, the time of contemplation and meditation, there may be some valuable information that we gain through the practice of contemplation and meditation, because the Jack, again, is looking at the Seven of Diamonds. So that's one way to look at that. And that would be maybe those practices and the information gained will serve us in terms of the attainment of higher self-wisdom, right? Or wisdom gained through experience. Another thing with this, keeping with the idea that we're talking about our growth and development, teaching and learning through experiences, right? Then this card is about being the student of life. Because for me, this is the student and the scholar card, right? So the student is the one who learns through experience, and then the scholar is the person who becomes wise as a result of those learning experiences, right? So here we have this idea about being a student of life. And this could actually be somebody making the investment, maybe in their own self-development, self-growth and development, personal growth and development, but maybe enrolling in some sort of course or study. And even with that, if there is some tuition involved, about making it clear on what is going to be the return on the investment. What are you going to get out of pursuing that course of study? And then the last thing I want to talk about here, because I talked about the 9 being about wisdom gained through the higher self, or being connected to the higher self. And then the 7 here is about one's spirituality. Then the Jack of Diamonds can represent a person who is able to connect to the spirit world. So there may be, if you put in the time and energy into contemplation and meditation, that may be how you gain information that's valuable, right? It's by, being connected to spirit, connected to your higher self. So I'm seeing all of those with the 7 of Diamonds, Jack of Diamonds, 9 of Clubs. So now let's take a look at the cards that are on the other side of the line this week, starting with the card closest to the 9 of Clubs. And here we have the 5 of Spades. Okay, so now the first thing that I notice is that we have a Spades card. Spades for me is the suit that can represent problems, challenges, obstacles, hurdles, those kinds of things. And so we're moving from a club to a spade. So for me, this is about work and business, or work and effort. And when it's followed by a spades, there's a potential here about working our way into a problem or a challenge this week, because I read according to suits, right? And so the challenging sense here with the 5 of Spades, this card for me can represent handling a problem or handling a difficulty, because the 5 is the number for me that represents the hands and being hands-on, right? So there is something of a problem that we may encounter that we're going to have to handle, right? And I'm looking at the card that came before it. If we go with the idea about this is time and distance, then it could be suggesting that this problem that has to be handled could be something that has been a long time coming, and so it could just be a matter of maybe, we've created distance between ourselves and the issue, and now something is happening with that, where now it's coming front and center, and it's requiring our attention. Because again, this card can represent the idea here of handling a problem or handling a difficulty. Now, the suit of spades can also represent the mind. So for me, this could represent a change of mind or a change in the way that we're thinking, right? So now that's a more positive idea, and then that would fit more with what the cards came before, right? If we're talking about the idea about growth and development, or spiritual journey, emotional journey, psychological journey, there could be taking a look at the situations that we have been investing time and energy in, spending time in meditation and contemplation and gaining valuable information. On the other side of that leads to a change in mind or a change in mindset or a change in the way that we've been thinking about it, which could also lead to a change in how we handle situations. I know this, if we're talking about handling problems and difficulties, I just know that once we gain some kind of wisdom, maybe wisdom access through our higher self, we see our problems differently, and as a result of seeing them differently, we handle them differently. Right? One thing that's coming to be in the moment with this card is that there may be a situation for some of us this week in which we learn the lesson. Remember, clubs is about learning. Learn the lesson about standing on our own 2 feet. For me, this card can represent standing on our own 2 feet and becoming independent. So some of us may be learning the lesson of being able to stand our own 2 feet and handle our own problems and difficulties, right? So in that sense, the 5 of spades is actually a very positive card, right? Now, spades is a suit that can represent elimination, right? So if we go with the idea that the 7 of diamonds over here on the other end of the line is talking about the evaluation of our time, energy, and resources, we may get to a place where we want to start handling or taking some action or activity, the 5, into cutting out or eliminating. The suit of spades represents elimination and cutting things out of what's no longer serving us, what's no longer supporting us, what's no longer working in our lives, that kind of thing. And that would make sense with the suit of clubs talking about work and effort, right? So we're putting some attention or activity into cutting those things out that are no longer working and supporting us, For some of us, it may be high time that we do that or take that course of action. So that's how I would look at the 5 of spades here. And so now let's look at the last card in the line, rounding things out. We have, this is fantastic. Okay, so here we have the 7 of hearts on the other side of the line. So the first thing that I want to say is we have the number 7 repeating. So here, with the 7 repeating, so we have an emphasis on spirituality. Again, because that's one of my meanings for the number 7, or one of my associations for the number 7. But the other thing about the 7 is that it represents improving something. So it represents improvement, right? So we're putting the energy into improving things, right? Improving things in our material, physical world, right? And then here, this card represents improving relationships. The suit of hearts represents feelings and emotions. It also represents relationships and the way we relate to other people. So if we follow the guidance that's being offered by the 4 previous cards, here at the end of the line, in some areas with relationships to other people, we will see some improvement, right? And the suit of hearts can represent healing. So there may be improvement in healing a relationship in particular, right? And it could also be the relationship that we're having with ourselves. If I go back to the 9 being the focus card and the 9 representing the higher self, then This could be improving the relationship that we're having with ourselves. Remember, the 7 is also about self-awareness and personal insight, and sometimes it represents solitude, right? So there may be healing on that level, right? Again, and that would make sense with this card talking about a psychological journey, and then this card would be talking about healing on a psychological or emotional level, right? And going with the order of the cards, it would come as a direct result of taking the action of standing on our own 2 feet, learning to cope with our own problems, becoming more independent, cutting out the people, conditions, circumstances that are no longer serving and supporting us, that are not working in our best and highest good. And then we get here. Now, the other thing that I want to say about this card is that this card is known as the second time around, or the second chance card. Isn't that funny? We had this card talking about something that's a long time coming, and then here we have the second time around. So there's something having to do with timing. It could just be a matter of something's coming back around in our lives for another go-round, or the second time around, in which we get to do things, handle it maybe differently than the way we did the last time it came around, right? It makes me feel like we're getting another shot at something, or another chance at something, right? And with the idea to improve it, right? If we're talking about a relationship, it could be another person coming back around, we getting another attempt or another chance to improve or heal a particular relationship, right? But it would be about what would help would be about thinking about it differently, or changing your mind about it, or changing your mindset around it. It's changing your way you're thinking that leads to this, because of the order of the cards. Now, I talked about this card being the second time around, or a second chance, right? So this could just be giving yourself another chance, right? If we talk about the relationship we're having with ourselves, how can we be giving ourselves another chance at something? Maybe another chance to do something differently than the way we did before. So again, the 7 of Hearts can represent improving a relationship, healing a relationship, being given a second chance, or taking a second chance at something, or another attempt, a second attempt, right? And now if I bring it back to the business aspect, because I talked more about the spiritual, the psychological, and the emotional, right? But if we bring this back to the work and business, then this could just be a matter of repeat business, right? If we go with the idea that we're working on gaining business, then something might have to change with regards to how we interact with maybe previous customers, and focusing on how can we create a relationship with our existing clients so they become return clients. If we're talking about, another go around, or second chances, or the second time around, and this could just be about how can we create repeat business. Because it may be a matter for this person who wants to grow their business or attain more business. It may not just be about gaining or attaining new clientele or new customers. It may be about how can you create an experience, where existing customers become repeat customers, about getting them to come back for business again and again and again. So I'm seeing that for the business person, because I didn't want to leave that out, right? So on that note, I will go ahead and round out and end this week's Oracle Outlook. I'm James Himm Mitchell, and as I close, I'd like to thank you for sharing space here with me for this week's reading, and I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in our next video together. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, and I'm hoping that you have a wonderful week. Take care.